Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Chris Legaspi, and today we are going to do another episode of Every Frame a Painting. So, this is a new series where I do color studies and composition studies based on films and movies and TV shows that have excellent, gorgeous, world class cinematography, gorgeous photography, gorgeous lighting. So thank you for being here. Today's featured film is Dredd. Dredd from 2012. Dredd is a short for Judge Dredd, who is a comic book character, and this was one of the movie adaptations. And this is not the. There was older films called Judge Dredd that starred Sylvester Stallone, and that came a long time ago, and we're not going to talk about that. This is the 2012 Dredd. And if you have seen this movie or heard of it, comment below. Or maybe you want to see it. You probably will want to see it after watching this. Let me know if you have seen it and what did you think about Dread if you have seen it or have heard of it. And this series is streaming live, and all of these classes are going to be available, first available to our email subscribers and our Discord community, our brand new Discord community. So if you haven't already, make sure to join us on Discord or join my free private email insiders club. All you have to do is go to www.drawwithchris.com, and there you can enter your email. And once you enter your email, you'll get access links to Discord. And then there you can get all the recordings and other great content. And before we begin, comment below, where are you located? Where are you watching from? What time is it for you? I am currently in Thailand myself, and it's Saturday morning, 9 in the morning for me. So thank you for being here wherever you are. So, Dread, 2012 film. I just want to quickly give some credit to the artist here. This movie was directed by Pete Travis. Cinematographer is credited as Anthony Dodd Mantle. He's not quite like a super big name, and this movie was obviously not that widely known, wasn't a mega success. So this movie's not widely known, and neither is the work of our cinematographer here today. Anthony Dodd Mantle, but some of his other credits include Slumdog Millionaire, which was a big hit in the West, and The Antichrist. I haven't seen that movie myself, but I've saw some of the imagery, and it does look also gorgeous. So now I'm more curious to watch that myself. But yeah, in my opinion, Dread is just it is a superhero movie, and it's got the violence, it's got the action, the guns, the explosions, all the stuff you expect from a blockbuster movie. But in my opinion, the photography is just so unique, and the color scheme we'll take a look at as well. To me, what impresses me the most, besides the lighting and the photography, is just the super intelligent use of colors. Our cinematographer, Anthony Mantle, clearly has a very artistic sense of how to arrange colors in a very cohesive way. And we'll look at some examples, of course. Okay, in the first episode, I broke down some of the process that I go through when I do these film studies. I think it's a very important exercise. In fact, it's one of the most important exercises that helped me get a break, when I first became serious about becoming a professional artist. One of my weaknesses was, well, one of many was color and composition. And I think comment below if you're like me and you feel like color and composition is something that you want to work on. And one of the things that I did was I just did tons of these little film studies. I did live action films, and I also did animation, which obviously has excellent color and composition. So I just did these little studies. I did at least one a day for 2 years, and I'm not joking. And I didn't spend that much time on them. You'll see the process I went through. But that's why I went into such detail in the very first show about how to do it. Well, you definitely want to review that. So I'm not going to go over the process too much. But in this episode, the second episode, I want to talk about another part of the process that I go through, which are the really important questions to ask. So these are the things that when you look at a great work of art, any work of art, it could be photography, cinematography, it could be a painting or a drawing. It's important to pause and take a moment to just absorb what you're looking at and take a moment to be present, to kind of get in the moment and to start to appreciate the artistry. And then once you do that, then you can be aware of what things that you notice, what things grab you, what things get your attention, what things, charge you emotionally. So take a moment to be present and appreciate the work of art. When I sit down to specifically to study the composition or the color, these are the four questions that I ask. The four questions are: number one, what is the dominant color? Number two, what is the lightest and darkest color? Number three, what is the most saturated color? And number four, what are the color gradations? So, number one, what is the dominant color? Generally, in a work of art or in a frame in this case, there's generally one color that's kind of takes up most of the space. It's in most of the frame. So sometimes it's really obvious, sometimes it's less obvious. So here, let's look at this top example here. This is from Dredd. Beautiful lighting as well, and beautiful color. Let's look at the color. What is the dominant color? Comment below. In this top example, what is the dominant color? Is it red? Is it green? Is it blue? Is it orange? Well, if you answered green, you would be correct. There's lots of green everywhere. Green light, that's a conscious choice. There's also probably a green tint. You probably put some green in the after post-production, which makes the wall look green. The character, she's wearing like a dark green kind of police outfit thing. His jacket looks green, his pants look green. So it's a green light, and it's pushing everything towards green. So that's clearly the dominant. And it's not a super obvious green. It's not a very saturated green. It does take some experience to interpret. For example, this block right here on the wall is green, but it is definitely green. This lower image, what is the dominant color in this lower image? Comment below. Yeah, this one also has green. Now it's not as obvious, but there's multiple lights happening here. There's like this warm spotlight right here in the model, but the bed sheets have this green gray similar to the frame above, and this big green bed sheet here, or whatever this is clearly green. That's hidden green. So, and and this warm light outside of the bed here. So there's a lot of warms too. So it's probably like a 60-40 green, but it's definitely takes up a lot of space. The bed sheet takes up most of the space on the frame, and that's mostly a green, in this case, more of a neutral green. Now, question number two, what is the lightest and darkest color? Let's look at the top frame again. What is the brightest color? What is the darkest color? Well, the darkest is pretty obvious. It's probably his shadow. So again, this is a green kind of tinted frame, probably in post-production. So it's probably here or back here, maybe underneath here. Right. So the shadow in this character, the shadows in the background, those are the darkest colors. So that would be green. What is the lightest color in this frame? It's probably her hair. She has light blonde hair, and there's a strong spotlight on her, so the highlight is probably the brightest thing, and that's kind of a yellowy, the local color is yellow. So it's a yellowy bright thing and a dark green. This frame, this lower frame, what is the lightest? What is the darkest? So squint right now if you can't see it too well. So I'm squinting right now. The brightest thing is, I think, this little nugget here on the left, right here. That little nugget is a yellow. The darkest thing, I think, is probably the shadow on her, the shadow back here. So these shadows are a bit greeny, but they're so dark it really doesn't matter too much. Probably right here too. So this has a little bit of purple, like a gray kind of purple tint. And that's also very, very dark right there. So question number 3, what is the most saturated color? What is the most saturated? So if we look at the frame above, comment below, what is the most saturated color? Remember, we agreed that green is the dominant color, but is green the most saturated color here? Well, I would argue it's this red, this little red spray paint. And by the way, I don't think this was an accident that this thing is painted this way and it's red in this frame. So probably the cinematographer, director of photography, this was a conscious choice to make this painting red. And yeah, it's definitely super saturated red. There's some saturated greens up here as well. And on her face, there's some saturated oranges. But this one is just so dominant. So I would say it's the red. This bottom frame, what is the most saturated color? There's a bunch of oranges back here, yellows and oranges, even a really saturated spot of blue. I believe these are like pill bottles and things. On her, some saturated, the red, the blood hand. Yeah, it's probably, well, if it's not this little nugget of blue, it's probably the red, the blood red on her hand. And this lime green, this is super saturated as well. So yeah, these 3 patches, the hand, the lime green, these little blue things, in terms of saturation, that's where I would look. And over here, it's clearly this big red little demon spray paint thing. And question number 4, the last question I ask is, what are the color gradations? So color gradations are movements. Gradations are gradients, movements, how color shifts from one color to the other, right? From left to right, does the colors change? From top to bottom, does it change? From inside out, does it change? From one corner to the other? So if we look at the top frame, are there any gradations? Well, I would argue that there's a little bit of a red, right? There's this red hotspot, and then it gradates out into the dominant green world. So you see that there's a little bit of gradation as we go from this red spray paint thing, this red graffiti. You can see it more here from the red here in his face, and then gradation, 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 green. You see that? Red here, green wall here. You see that? That is a gradation. That is a movement. So we want to be aware of that because we want to put that in our own paintings, right? Red here, green here. So there's an overall green gradation as it moves towards the red here. And then top to bottom, there's some browns on the ground. You see that orangey, yellowy brown? And then what's the top? The top is green because of this light. So you see that? There's a movement top to bottom. So we want to be aware of that. This bottom frame, what are the gradations? There's a couple, right? There's a couple obvious ones. We can see a coolie green light on the bed sheet here. But then over here, it's warm. So there's a grade. You see that? There's a warm spotlight here. So there's a gradation from coolie green gray bed to bright orange light. Gradation movement there. Obviously, too, in the whole frame, this lower area is green, and then it gets light saturated green, and then darker green, and it slightly transitions into like this kind of purple pillow. So that's a gradation happening there. In this little corner is pretty colorful. You can see it gets brighter and saturated here. Then it gets darker, 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 and less color here. So bright and saturated, dark and less saturated. So that little area has its own gradation. So these are just the kind of the things that I look for because again, these are the things that we want to put in our work. And these are the things that make our colors look good. And I'll show you as we do our demonstrations why color gradations and really all of these questions are important. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a couple examples of color studies from Dredd. and try to get through as many as I can. In the first show, I talked about some helpful tips if you're new to this, if you've never done film studies, comp studies. One of the things that I suggest is to start with an easy one. Don't pick one that has super complicated faces, super complicated detail, super complicated architecture. Obviously, the more complex the drawing is, the less time and energy you have to focus on the color. So for me, I'm going to focus mostly on the color. And if you're the same, definitely pick something that's easy to draw. That's always a good advice. The less complicated it is to draw, the more time you have to devote to color and composition. So that is a good thing to practice. So this is a frame here, an interior shot. There's a lot of interior shots in Dredd. It takes place mostly in sort of this like dystopian sci-fi kind of apartment building. I'm going to try to draw the perspective. I know I said pick an easy one, but this one has a little bit of perspective, but it's just, it's not a full city scene at the very least. I got to try, try my best to do decent perspective drawing. Maybe use a different brush. How about that? And these characters, I'm not going to draw any detail at all. To me, they're just shapes of color and value, really. That's all I'm trying to focus on. So it's not going to be my greatest character in shadow drawing. So don't worry about that. It's not about that really. In the first video in this series, I talked about ways to do studies, and one way is to do a full, I call it one-to-one copy. Basically, try to copy it, every detail and shape. Try to do a full representation of the work of art. That is one way to do it, but not today for me. Not today. I just want to get the overall color. Notes. Okay, so there's my drawing. Okay, let's take a look at this frame and see what we can come up with. And let's look at this glorious frame. This is one of the reasons why I love this movie. It's in my opinion very underrated as a movie. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's in my opinion it's an entertaining movie, especially if you like comics and things like that. If you like the subject matter. But what I like about the director and the cinematographer, they took something so ordinary. They took, this set is probably it's not a big budget Avengers Marvel set, right? This is probably just an ordinary building that they repurposed to make a movie, but the color choices are just outstanding and it's so disciplined. The color in this movie is very disciplined. There's an overall green theme, as you may see. Those of you who watch the movie, you'll see there's an overall dominance of green, and it's very consistent, very disciplined, especially when the main character, Judge Dredd, is in the frame. Green is such a dominant part of his color scheme. But the building has a this orange, this beautiful, beautiful, consistent orange to it, and which complements green quite beautifully. So, that probably was a conscious choice. The main character, Judge Dredd, is a dark green thing. He's not like green like the Hulk, but he's like a desaturated greeny leather kind of guy. So he's mostly green. So you put him in a desaturated green in a saturated orange world, and it's just going to pop and sizzle. It's going to look so nice. Those two colors do work very well together, in my opinion. Also, take a look at the conscious specks of green, right? Saturated green, look at the little specks of green here, the door, little here, little here. There's green light on these characters. Probably also they used in post-production. They pushed whatever these characters are towards green. All right, so let's go back to our questions. What is the dominant color? What is the brightest, the darkest? What is the most saturated? And what are the gradations? What is the dominant color in this frame? Comment below. Well, if you answered orange, you would be correct. It's clearly orange. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my frame with orange now. And I'm just going to drop an orange. What I'm going to do is drop, and I'm not going to color pick. If you're doing this at home on digital, you can of course do this with traditional media as well. If you're doing this at home on digital, please don't color pick. That defeats the whole purpose of this. So don't use your color picker. So make a guess. I'm looking at this whole field. So imagine this is not a frame of a realistic movie. It's just a field of shapes of color, right? I'm taking this bit of orange here, this orange here, this field of orange here, this field of orange here, this orange skin on this actor. So I'm just kind of gonna get an average. This little bit of pinky orange here. I'm just gonna go for an average of those colors. I'm gonna make my best guess, put it on my canvas, and that's clearly not it. So typically what I do is I make a guess and then I pull up hue saturation slider, whatever software you use, and just change it up, hit, and then hit change it up. So that's a nice average. Temperature wise, that's a nice average. More saturated, nope. Less saturated, more saturated, nope. Where I had it was good. Brighter, darker, better. Okay, that's just a nice average field of the dominant color, orange. Okay, what are the lightest and the darkest? Well, if we squint, the brightest color is the white t-shirt here, but it has a greeny tint. You see that? Probably because of the post-production, but also warm lighting will give you cool shadows. So these are coolly green shadows. So that means it's a warm light, and it's not much color there. It's like he's wearing like a yellowy tank top. So probably the most saturated, this little bit of yellow right there. Excuse me, the brightest. The next brightest is probably this little patch right here, or this green door, the green light coming through the door. And maybe this patch of wall. It's like pinky orange. So that will be the brightest, probably here or here. This is close. It's very close. Let's see. What is the darkest? Well, it's clearly the shadow. So this probably the shadow here, this shadow here, this shadow here, here, probably here, this zone right here, or this zone right here, or this zone. So those are the darkest. So they're so dark, the color really doesn't matter. But because we have a warm light, these are being pushed towards warm, cool. So these shadows are pushed towards green. This one is kind of got this overall green, orange. So these shadows are quite orange. Now, the third question is, what is the most saturated color? So comment below. This one's a bit tricky in this frame. What is the most saturated color? Comment below. If you answered the orange light thing way in the background, you would be correct. So it's right here. In fact, this thing, I just caught this. See that little nugget right there of red? That is very saturated red, very saturated orange right next to it. So this little bar. So isn't this interesting? This to me is artistry. Why is this artistry? Because he puts super saturated red and orange, right? As we all know, the most eye-catching color probably in known to human beings is red. For some reason, human beings, when we look at red, perhaps it's blood, also the color blood. Red just grabs human beings' attention. You can't help it. It's ingrained in your DNA. Saturated red grabs your attention. So he's putting a super attention grabbing thing way, way in the background, way, way left in the frame, and it's small. And look what's counterbalancing. Remember, in a few other shows, I talked about counterbalance. And look at that, the dominance of the character. Dominant character. Characters are dominant. Faces, human beings love to look at faces. We love high contrast. So he puts a bright, high contrast human being on one side of the frame and a super eye grabbing attention grabbing color on the other side of the frame, but it's small. You see that? Big human beings, small eye grabbing red. So that is absolutely stunning counterbalance. This is masterful, in my opinion. And you definitely want this in your painting, especially those of you who want to do posters and book covers. This is composition 101. You put a big thing. In fact, I'm going to sketch it here. Those of you who have taken my composition classes, you know I talk about counterbalance all the time. Counterbalance is this idea that you have that counterbalance is the idea that a frame or an image, a composition, to make it more interesting, you want to make it asymmetrical. And asymmetry requires that one side is different than the other. One way to do asymmetry is scale. Other way to do it is with color. Other way to do it is with contrast and value. So this photographer, this artist, he does all three. He put a big thing. This is absolutely stunning. This is why I love this movie. I've seen this movie maybe 100 times, I think. It never gets old. I can rewatch it. As a movie and as an artist, I just, oh, this is basically this right here. This is composition that you want in your work. A big thing on one side of the frame compared to a small thing. A small attention grabbing thing acts as a counterbalance to a big attention grabbing thing, a less attention grabbing thing. So that is something we want in our work. So that is just composition. So anyway, back to what we're saying. This is the most saturated thing right here. The last question is, what are the color movements? What are the gradations? Well, they're really from left to right. There's a little bit, right? There's a darker zone here with light accents, of course, and then it gets brighter here. So there's a gradation of darker. See this dark, deep, rich red, and then over here it's also orangey. This is orangey red. This is also orangey red, but it's not as dark and deep. It's brighter. It's brighter because there's a light here and there's our characters. So there's kind of that from left to right, kind of there. Even this little zone, right? It goes from dark to brighter, 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 brighter. You see that? So there's a movement there. This characters clearly have it right, and we all those. If you've watched my videos for any time, I talk about this all the time. The movement from the light to the shadow, that is a gradation. The wall, you see the wall? This is a very common gradation. You see the wall? See this patch of orange and this patch of orange? They're clearly different. One is brighter, one is darker and more saturated. You see that? So that is a gradation there. This little patch of wall also darker, lighter here. So, you know, I'm being a little detailed here, but I'm just trying to show you the things that I look for. All right, so now I'm going to try to do this study and not take an hour. I'm going to try to go through quickly as best as I can. I'm going to fill this patch. If you're watching this, comment if you have never seen this movie and now you're kind of curious about it, either as an artist or maybe as a fan of the genre. I think it succeeds. Obviously, it succeeds as a work of art, or else I wouldn't be talking about it. But it also succeeds as a superhero movie, in my opinion. It's a good one. Comment below if you have seen Slumdog Millionaire. So that's another one of the directors, or excuse me, the cinematographers, probably his most famous movie, Slumdog Millionaire, which is an excellent movie. I don't quite remember the photography, but now I definitely want to see it now. I'm more appreciative of it. What I'm doing is I'm just blocking in some of the orange. I typically work back to front, light to dark. I'm trying to think of an order. To be honest, I don't normally do this in the computer. I do when I first started becoming serious about being a professional artist, I did all of my film studies on with traditional media, watercolor, oil paint, and black and white, obviously. I got to get this dark in here now. So it's, honestly, it's a bit awkward. I don't really like it. I prefer to use the computer. Excuse me, digital. What am I saying? Prefer to use traditional media for these. It's so much fun. It's a lot more fun, in my opinion. When I do these, with a computer, I tend to noodle. By noodle, I mean just get too obsessed with details. I got the main field of color. Now I'm just going. I want to hit the darkest darks and the lightest lights, just so I have an idea of where I'm at in this frame, and then I'll come in with maybe some more hand brushing tools. So what I'm looking at is this field of dark, and I'm going to look for the average. Now, obviously, it's not all the same dark, obviously. So I'm just going to look for the average. First of all, it's too bright. And as I go darker, so this is about the right value, but as I go darker, the saturation doesn't matter, right? The hue doesn't matter. Right now, it's basically the same orange, but darker, right? If I turn it towards green, well, you do notice it a little bit. So let's keep it there. I'm going to keep it this reddish orange. Okay, and then put the gradients in as I go. Let me block in the characters real quick. They're obviously going to be an important part. And I'm just going to use my lasso tool. And lasso tool is nice because or making masks is nice because I can't do detail. So I can't get I can't render his nose, or I can't render the character's eye, or I can't render the form of his shoulder. That's really nice. you know Obviously, if you're like me, your first instinct is to render the characters and figures, right? Because that's what you love. That's what you enjoy the most. But for this, again, this is a composition exercise, really, and color. So clearly, the characters aren't all the same color, but they're they're dominantly dark, right? They're mostly in shadow. And as we saw earlier, the shadow is green. So I'm going to shift it towards a green, and I could change it any time. I'm just going to put it there just to have it there. Okay, so that feels pretty good value-wise, saturation. That feels pretty good, right? If I look at mine and I just look at here, right? Look at the original. I'm looking at the value, so we can all agree the value is pretty close, right? I can add and change and refine later, but I'm also concerned about the temperature. So this is a green that I am guessing that's also here. Mine's pretty close, right? If we go too saturated, right? Now I'm off. If I go to a different shade of green, now it kind of loses the green, the vitality of it, because it's moving towards red. If I go this way, now it's moving towards blue. So, as green, you can go two ways, right? You can make it more blue-green or make it more yellow-green. So I'm going to keep it sort of this kind of in the middle as best as I can, and and leave it there. Obviously, it needs context, right? So just a blocky shape. So I'm good. I'm good now. Let me turn my drawing down. All right. So I decided to put the shadow on. It's another layer because what I want is the this general light shape. It's the brightest thing here, so I need it to be pretty bright, just so I can just so I can gauge where I'm at, what I'm doing. It's clearly the wrong temperature, right? It's more of a yellow, so I'm just going to use my hue set, and that feels pretty good. I got lucky. That feels pretty good. So I got kind of the start of the notes and the shapes. So now I'm going to do gradations. I'm going to do the movements. I need to put in that orange and that red. So I'm going to go full stop saturated orange and just see what it's like. Okay, that looks nice. So I just kind of guessed at this orange. I'm going to keep it. And obviously there's yellow, bits of yellow glowiness to it, but that's okay. I'm going to keep that. And then that little bit patch of orangey red right there. Okay, that's too bright. So typically what I do, if I make a pass, make a new layer, and then bring up hue set, and then adjust it. Because it's on its own layer, I could easily do that. So that's close. We're close here. Let me drop in that little patch of green. You guys see that right there? That's very curious. Let's see. Let's start with the background. Where am I at here? I'm here. Okay, nice. So I'm going to basically take a brush and I'm going to you can use whatever brush you want. You can get as much texture as you want or as little texture as you want. What I'm looking at is the gradation. So I'm not, the thing you don't want to do is try to color match. So go, okay, here, I have a dark red at I have a dark red. I have a dark orange. Oh, this is a. Oh, this orange is. Da, da, da. Oh, da, 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 da. You see that? That'll drive you nuts. What you want to do is train yourself to look at this shape and see it as a field that has general movements. So generally, this corner obviously is darker and redder and browner, whatever. Gets brighter, darker, a little bit brighter, and then it changes into whatever this is. So there's a movement. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to capture the movement. Oh, that is definitely wrong. Let's try that again. I'm going to color pick this, what I have there. I know I have to go darker and redder. So I'm going to do that in my color wheel, put it down. How am I looking? I'm looking okay. I'm looking okay. It's actually closer to that on the left. Let's put that down. That's pretty close. Actually, what needs to happen is the whole thing needs to be more saturated. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is draw a mask. I already have a mask. I'm going to make a hue set and then play with it. There it is. You see that? The moment I cranked up the saturation, it starts to make sense now. I do that. And I got my little nuggets. I got that. And then now I want to do this field. So there's a little bit of light and shadow here. So I'm just going to do that. Color pick, go darker, a little bit redder. Let's see what, and again, I'm putting it on a new layer so I can do my hue set magic there. Okay, that's pretty close. Nope. Okay, that's closer. So it does go towards red a little bit. And let's go back to red. What needs to change is the inside of the door now. Okay, it's pretty close. That relationship, I'm looking at that relationship. It's pretty close. I don't want to kill myself trying to get it right. So otherwise, this will take 2 hours. Okay, another important note here is actually the door. The door needs that green light to come through. So I'm just going to erase it out actually. This is an ugly erase job. It's okay. I'm not trying to win any contest here. Okay, so got that. Got that. Where am I here? What am I trying to figure out where I'm at? Okay, so I'm here. I'm going to take an airbrush this time. So what I'm looking at is this field of light coming through the door. So the top is a bit yellowy green. So I'm just going to put something down and guess. So that's my best guess right here. Look at that. It's close. Let's keep going. Now I'm going to guess this is green. So I'm going to go towards green. Let's just put something down, and I'm going to put it on a different layer so I can play with it. Okay, so actually the top one needs to go gray, or it's too bright, first of all. It needs to go gray. There it is. You see, the moment I turn the brightness down, it starts to make sense. The bottom one is too bright and too yellow. You can see that. It's way too yellow. Let's bring it towards green. There we go. Look at that. Now it's starting to read. Drop the saturation. Okay, that's looking better. I think it still needs to go a little bit more towards blue-green. There it is. Look at that. So that's a nice frame. So I got that. There's a gradation in the green. So I'm going to make a new layer. So it's right here. It's going to go a bit grayer and darker. You guys see that? And then it's going to go towards blue. It's this way. And then up top, clearly it gets brighter. So it's color select, it gets brighter and grayer. I'm going to move it towards the other way, towards yellow. Let's see what that looks like. So now I got the notes of the green that I want. So I'm in good shape. Let me do the shadow now. So the shadow, right, has some beautiful nuances. Let's try to get those. So, but what is the main movement? The movement is up here, it's darker and redder, which I have, but down here it gets greener. You see that? It gets grayer, which pulls it towards green. When you take a reddish orange and you make it grayer, you pull it towards the center of the color wheel, it becomes gray and cooler. So I'm going to do that. Where is that shadow shape? Right here. So I had the shadow shape, and then I'm going to make a clipping mask, and then let's take my airbrush, get my airbrush, and then I'm just going to put something down. So what I'm going to do is going to select what I have. I'm going to clearly move it towards green, and I'm just going to put something down and see where I'm at. Okay, so it's pretty good. It's a little too gray, so let me move it towards red. We can't really see it, huh? Gee, super gray. Oh, I see. It was the color I laid down was totally black and white. Okay, that feels pretty close. Feels pretty close. Not perfect, but it's close. Next is up here. There's some notes of more saturated red. I'm going to kind of color pick from what I have already. And let's see what those notes do. Oh, okay, that's not bad. It's not bad. It's too bright, obviously. It's pretty close. I'm going to keep that. That same. It's also a little bit here. It gets pretty dark here, right here. So I'm going to see if this color is that. Okay, nope. It's not bright enough. I can't see it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but anyway, I can see it. This little patch here, and it gets a little bit redder here. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's pretty close. I'm going to refine that a little bit. I didn't put it on its own layer like I said to do. Okay, so that looks pretty good. There's little notes of light and green there, so I'm just going to put those notes there, and I'm just going to call it a wrap because I can color pick now from my scene. See that? I color picked this. That's pretty close to what's there. Same thing up here. This little note of green. I'm going to color pick this green light. That's pretty close. You see that? Those notes are pretty close, and that's all I want. Is I want the notes to read. So I'm going to color pick the green that I have because it's a similar light. Most likely the same light they use or the same filter or effect they use in post-production is going to pull this light towards green as well. So this one's going to work. This one gets much more orange, so we need to respect that. It gets kind of pinky orange. This little bright spot, I don't know quite what that is, but it's not yellow. I'm going to make it blue. And let's see. That looks pretty good. This little patch of pink light. It's light on the wall. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I got some nice movement now in the that little light shape that I have. So that's, I'm gonna call that a rep. I just want to quickly do this wall just to show you an example of this process. So we have this wall right here. I mean, I got to do this wall too. There's no way I'm going to do the characters now. I've got this wall here, and you see the bottom is darker. There's a hard line, so that's paint, and then it gets brighter and then a little bit darker and grayer. So that is a good thing to do, to pay attention to. And I'm gonna use a mask. This time I'm gonna use, well, I could use airbrush as well, same thing. So right now this field is way too saturated. So I'm gonna color pick that and then just drop the saturation. Okay, so that feels pretty good. Just the field itself. All right, see, that feels pretty good, right? It feels better than it was before. So I like that. I'm gonna make a new layer and I'm gonna try to capture this lower field. So that feels pretty good. That's pretty close. I could play with it, of course, and draw the hard line if I want, but make sure it's in perspective. That perspective line is horrible. It feels pretty good. Feels pretty close. Let's play with it. Should it be darker? I think a little bit darker. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that looks okay. Could live with that. And I'm going to make that line a little bit harder. Don't know why. There it is. And then probably that same color is going to be up here as a gradient. Yeah, it is. So it's pretty close. And obviously there's that little strip of color too, and then there's the graffiti. But I just want to show you that some notes, little patch of paint and things like that, and the graffiti and things like that. It's not that important. The most important thing is the color field. As long as the color field is reading like it is, right? That's all. The most, see, before, after. So that's really the process. I know it's kind of sped up because I'm a little short on time, but I would do that for every section, right? We did the overall thing, then each individual shape needs that kind of treatment. All right, let's do one last example. Let's just take a minute to appreciate this glorious color. In my opinion, this is absolutely stunning cinematography. You know, it's pop, it's stylized, but I just love it, love it, love it, love it. Just look at the glory that we have here. And you know, those of you who watch movies or watch superhero movies or watch, you know, the big budget, typical Hollywood movies, this is a typical Hollywood scene, right? A violent action scene with a gun. But look at the artistry in this particular thing. Obviously, the color is absolute, the color choice, you know, is so gorgeous, you know, splitting the frame almost in half and have this gorgeous orange on one side and this gorgeous green on the other side. You know, the green is the dominance of the film, has a dominant green tilt, a little bit like Matrix. And then the red is just a beautiful accent, beautiful counterbalance, beautiful composition, just absolutely beautiful. And look at the counterbalance. I always say, if you have a field of green or a field of any color, put a touch of the complement in that field. It'll look much better. So here we have a big, huge field of green. And where does he put the complement? Of course, the character. Look at that. And he's not, you know, he's a subdued skin tone. It's not a super saturated skin tone, but his blood is very saturated. And look at that. It's so small, but it's just creates beautiful pop against all this green. So that is artistry. So those of you who are learning painting, do this. When you have a character that has flesh tone with like a little bit of a red accent, put him in front of a field. If you want to put him in a field of green, make sure it's desaturated green. This is desaturated green. But look how nice that works. And look on this side, right? Here we have this intense orange and yellow and red, right? Where does he put a complement? Right here. This little nugget of green. It's the same green that's in this side. It seems so insignificant, but if you take this out, this field loses a lot of impact. This little touch of green, it's gray green, a gray mid-tone green, makes this whole field of warm work. So those of you who are learning painting or learning whatever, want to do illustrations, do this. When you have a big field of warm and orange, find a way to sneak in little chunks, little pieces, little fields, little shapes of the complement. This makes the whole thing, and this unifies it, right? Now we have we don't have two separate, we have two separate worlds. We have two separate paintings, basically, two separate photographs. A left photograph with characters, and the right with this bit more abstract. But now he's unified the whole thing. He put a little bit of the dominant color on the left part of the frame, he puts it in the right. The dominant color on the right side of the frame, he puts it on the left. You see that? That's all he needs to unify this whole piece and make it one cohesive, beautiful painting. This, I mean, it's a violent, ugly, stereotypical Hollywood movie subject matter, but in my opinion, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous work of art, photography-wise. This is a gorgeous painting. So enough about gushing. Let's get to work here. So I'm just going to start to draw it. Hopefully it will take less than 2 hours. My God, every time I do these, I'm like, man, I want this to be less than an hour, but it never happens. I don't know why. So hand, da 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 da, face, hand, split the frame in half. Gonna hold shift, split the frame in half, and then this little beautiful nugget of shape that I was just gushing over. In fact, every frame of this you could totally steal. If you're following along at home, do a study of this frame and then take this frame and replace it with your characters. Boom. Then you have an illustration. Instead of a guy holding a gun to a girl's head, maybe you're doing a fantasy piece. Take a knight or whatever, or an orc, make them pink. Done. You're done. You know what I mean? Or do a space alien or a space marine. If you're doing a space marine piece, right? Space marine, mostly green, expose his face, put a drop of blood on his face, done. You're done. That's how that's how you can have you can quickly speed up your learning curve with color and composition with these, which is why I keep talking about these, and I will keep talking about these until I'm blue in the face. Let's get to work. Let's get to work. Get to work. All right. Of course, the field. Of course, of course, of course. What is this field? We know it's clearly the background. What is the dominant color? Well, there really isn't one. It's green, right? But not by much. Notice this frame isn't split down the middle. It's about 60-40, right? This is the middle. So it's about 60-40 green. So let's just drop in a green. And I know that's the wrong green, but stay with me, stay with me, stay with me here. There is a method to the madness here. Then I'm going to drop an orange. I'm just going to drop it, and then because I need to see both for them to work. So this green is too lime green. It is too saturated. Now it does get saturated in places, but not that limey green. Lime green is like a blue green. There's movement, huh? It's actually, you know what? I'm just going to make a general desaturated green just to play on the safe side. There is a movement there. And this one, we know, this one's pretty close. If we're talking about the average of the two, it's pretty close. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to block in the characters, their shape, and then block in the foreground objects because I need to see both to make this decision about the background. So the background, I'm close. I just dropped in a field, right? A wash, a note. So now I'm going to put in a dark shape. Let's make it green. What I'm looking at is this thing, these foreground objects, this thing, whatever's blocked, this thing, and this thing. This thing's important. These are not that important, but the shape is and the darkness is, and they're mostly green. So I'm just going to block them in and draw them up. Let's see what I could do. I'm just going to drop in. I'm going to use a hard edge brush because I'm going to use clipping mask, obviously. You know, if you have gone through my courses, Photoshop courses, and seen my other videos, you know I do clipping mask a lot. Clipping mask is fun and convenient. The shape doesn't have to be perfect, but it's, you know, close. And typically I would do these small as well. So when you do them small, you don't have, you can't do any color or detail, excuse me. So that's one of the difficult things too, is if you're just doing a color study, a composition study, it's important to train yourself not to obsess with the details, which is tough, especially if it's subject matter you like. You know, if you like drawing faces like me, I'm sure you do if you're watching this. You know, you wanna draw the details in the characters' faces. You want to draw his hands, you want to draw his guns and whatever. So you gotta discipline yourself to not do that. Just think abstract blocky shapes, which will make your painting better. Really, that's one of the things that you'll learn as those of you who want to learn painting. As you grow as a painter, you'll discover that the best realist painters are actually abstract designers. The best realistic painters are abstract designers because painting really is abstract design. Painting is basically a abstract arrangement of little blobs. We call them swatches or tiles. It's basically arranging blobs of paint, tiles. That's what we call them, little tiles. If you look at any of the great realist, Sargent, Bouguereau, Velasquez, even Rembrandt, Caravaggio, de la Tour, Vermeer, right? All the great realists that we love, the Zorn, especially Sorolla, the 19th century guys. This is very obvious. If you look at their paintings in a museum, you look at them closely. What do you see? You don't see perfectly rendered. You see blobs, right? You see little tiles, and that's what this exercise will teach you. is the importance of tiles. And that's something I'm going to talk about in my upcoming painting and design class because it doesn't get talked about enough, is how a good painter, a good colorist really has to be a good designer. You cannot paint properly, especially realism. You can't paint realism without design. There's no way. So anyway, enough of that. So the dark shape, I'm just gonna put FG, gonna put BGR, BGG, and then I'm gonna put the characters. I'm gonna make a selection tool. Right now, this is painful for me. I have this instinct to frigging draw the character. You know what I mean? Comment below if you're like me. My gut instinct is to like, nah, I want to use my pencil. I want to draw this ear. My instinct is to draw this ear, to draw the gun, to draw the hand. Why? Because it's fun. I'm like, oh man, drawing that ear and that gun will be a hell more fun than making a goddamn frisket, making a selection tool. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. No, if you're watching this. All right. So we have a shape, right? What is the general thing? It's tough. His face is flesh tone pink. Her face is flesh tone greeny yellow. You see that? So we have flesh tone here, dark on the bottom. So it's like, again, it's kind of like the background. It's 60-40 split. So I'm just going to drop in a field of dark. Just make it a mid-tone dark green just to play it safe. Because I'm going to just put that there for now. It's close. That's kind of the average right here. If you take all of these. All right. All right. So that's some of the groundwork. Why I did all that groundwork was so I can do this. I forgot one shape, which is right here. Okay, let me make the foreground darker so it stands out. All right, so this one literally did take less time than the previous one. All right, you're like, come on, Chris, are you gonna draw something or just make freaking blobbies all day? Thought you were a poster artist, man, not a stupid graphic designer. What's going on, Chris? Okay, so, all right, let's get to work. Let's look at this field of green. We're gonna have some fun now, finally. If you're still with me here. All right, guys, where are we at here? Look at this field of green. What is the darkest? What is the lightest? What is the movement? What is the most saturated? Da 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 da. What is the brightest, the darkest? We know this pot is the brightest. That's the brightest thing in this whole picture, probably this pot and this thing. The darkest in this field, probably up here in this corner, right? Also darker here. So let's do that. Let's drop in the brightest thing first. Please don't color pick the pot. I'm going to put it on its own layer. I'm just going to airbrush it in. Leave it there for now. What's the darkest thing? The shape in the corner. So color pick my base color. And of course, there's a gradation to it. I should use the gradient tool. It'll look a lot better, but sometimes I forget, a little bit lazy. Okay, so now we have some context. Where are we at here? I would say the dark needs to get a little bit darker, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to maintain the layers for now because, you know, these decisions will change as we add the rest of the color notes. Color, if you remember one thing from me today, is that color never works in isolation. Color is all about relationship. Meaning right now, for example, this green right now looks okay, right? From here to here, right? My interpretation looks pretty good. But the moment I add his pink skin, the moment I add her yellowy skin, the moment I add orange here, it'll all change. So I just gotta take my best guess for now and do the best I can for now. Drop the notes that I think are there for now, and we'll see what we can do moving forward, because I can always adjust them in the computer. If you're doing these on the computer, it's super easy to do. Just adjust them. There's a bit of a warmer, brighter green, so I'm going to try to get that note there. It's a bit more yellow and a bit brighter and saturated. Let's see. Let's see if I'm right. Am I right? Oh yeah, I am right. You see, the moment I put that, it kind of changes the relationship of everything. That is so nice. I like that a lot. Okay, and I think overall it needs to go darker here. Okay, so I'm pretty close. I'm good enough to move forward. Let's go to the red field. It's buddy, it's neighbor. Well, let's stop here for a minute. This little dark shape. That's it's an easy one, right? It's darker here, lighter here, green here. It's also green, but much darker. Okay, that's wrong. I don't know why that looks like that. There we go. It's too red. There it is. It's more of a dark green. It's really dark, actually. Temperatures I'm not quite happy with, but it's okay. It'll work. And yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's not perfect. Put a little bit of this green over here. A little bit of note, little color note there. All right. Let's look at the orange now. This orange is easy. What is the movement? What is most saturated? What is the brightest? What are the movements? Most saturated is clearly the red, and the orange is all, and then yellow. So that's a clear movement. You see that? Red, orange to yellow. You see that? That's an easy one to see. This is the brightest thing, this little nugget right here. Maybe this as well. It gets darker here. So that you see that? There's a movement from bottom to top, darker gray or greener, picking up the green. And again, it gets brighter and orange up here. Left to right, there's a movement. Brightest, brightest, darkest down here. See that? So that's the analysis that I'm going through in my head. Probably a texture brush would look nice. Let's try that. Well, let's do not texture brush first. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank up the orangeness. It's right now, it's too, oh, there it is. That helps. That helps. I need more saturation so I can judge the red. That's my first concern. Just making sure I have a good red now. Oh, that looks like blood. Looks a little scary, huh? Super intense. I'm looking at this. My mood is changing. That's how powerful color is. I can feel like I feel like I want to eat something or or I don't know. Definitely change of mood. I'm trying to fine tune the red to kind of match the relationship up top. And that's, pretty close. There's more nuances to it, so I have to just be patient. Won't be able to get it right away because the relationship is not quite there. The yellow. Let's go to the yellow. Oh, that's nice. You can see it's not quite the right yellow. It's close. Let's make it brighter and more yellow orange on one end. Let's see what that does. I'm looking at the upper right corner. So this little field, what I've done here is I made my best guess and made it a sort of this yellow, but you guys can see it's not right. It's too green. There's something not right. So I'm going to take this color, make it more orange, and then let's see what happens if I. Okay, this is it's too dark, too dark, too yellow, bright orange. Okay, better, good. Okay, so now that color relationship works a lot better. It's still not perfect. We have to pick the right yellow against the right orange, yellow orange. It's close, but not perfect. Not happy with it. I got to move on though, because that relationship will take some time. Now this is right here. A little nugget there feels right. Well, before I do the writing, I need to establish this dark, and let's use a texture brush for that. That looks nice. And what is that? It's kind of a gray. It's this color, but gray, which means it's gray, darker, and it's moving towards a little bit towards green, towards the complement. Doop, 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 doop. You see? Texture brush just adds nice thing. It's not necessary, but whatever. It's close, right? Not perfect, but close. Let's play with it. Should it be darker? Oh, darker's better. Darker's better. It needs it needs like kind of a layered approach. Darker's better. Turn down the saturation. Worse. Turn it up a little bit better. The hue towards violet, or is this green? Towards green, towards purple, towards green is better. There it is. So that's close. We could refine that. And let me get this thing in the background. Now we can do a little bit of detail. And that is, let me just touch on that writing. I'm just going to try to hint at the writing. It's not that important, but let's see. what I need. It's brightness. That's what I need. And it's close enough. I don't want to spend. It's not that detail. It's not that significant. Let's do the dark foreground objects because that's important. Let's take a look. Now, this is a bit more advanced. So this is all dark, but there is a movement. I don't know if you guys can notice, but it's pretty. Look up here. Do you see the blueness of here? So this is blue. This is all dark, right? But there's a subtle blue here, and it gets darker and greener, probably the atmosphere. Same here, darker and greener, little touches of blue. But then here the dark gets warm, probably because this side of the room starting to dominate. So it starts to warm up here, but then they have that green little bit of accent. So what I'm going to do is take this. Well, it's pretty dark. I'm going to move it towards blue and just put something there. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, it's not showing up. Is it showing up? I don't know why. Okay, there it goes. There we go. That looks pretty good. It's a little bit too purple blue. Let's take it. Needs to be more green blue. There you go. Much better. Much better. I'm gonna take that and what else? What else? What else? I think it's okay. I do see it also here. So probably there's a bluish light on the left side of this frame. And I think overall can go darker. Right now it's at 9%. Let's make it 5% or 4. Saturation really doesn't matter. Make that dark value pop even more. You can see it here. Oh yeah, that looks much better. Here, here, here. And then as I go here, I'm going to move it towards red. It really doesn't matter. You're not going to see much of it anyway. But you're not going to see the temperature, but it's very subtle. All right, now I'm going to do the thing on the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color pick a green I have in my frame. And there it is. You see how that is pretty close, right? That's a pretty close relationship. It's not perfect, but relationship-wise, it's close. All I did was color pick that green I'd already established. It's pretty close. If I squint at it, should it be brighter? Yeah, possibly. Should it be more saturated? Yeah, possibly. Let's try that. A little bit more saturation and bluer and slightly darker. Let's see what that does. Make that gradation a little more obvious. It's close enough. All right, so I got the background, and I don't think I have time to do the character, but where are we here? Where's the character? Let's just try to go through it quickly. There's no way. I'd like to start with the darks first. So it's mostly dark. I'm just going to pick a dark from the background and then just kind of really be super abstract and graphic as best as I can. Because although this is a color study, there is a dominant value to this field, and that dominant value is dark. It's mostly dark. So I need the value first at the right temperature, obviously, but value is the first thing I need to make sure that my study reads like the frame. And there's a foreground object here. So she's dark, even her hand shadow is dark. She has like there's something with a rim light over there. So that's not her. I believe that's in the it is. It's a bottle in the foreground, has a rim light. So I'm gonna ignore that for now. It's important. I want to respect that strong value and color, but for now, let's just ignore it. Try to also abstract his face and the shapes. This is tough. And of course, he has a rim light, a blue rim light. It's okay. We can get that later. And actually, this whole area should be dark, but it has like a mist to it. His hand is also quite dark. Tattoo, his hand makes it dark. So anyway, so these are the dark shapes. I'm doing as best as I can to make a dark shape. And I do that so I can add my gradations, of course. So obvious gradation is this side, right, is brighter and more green. So let's do that. I'm just going to color pick a green that I already established in the background. See that? Okay, that looks okay. It looks okay. We're getting there. It's too olive green. It needs to be more blue green. Yes. Yes, blue green. Darker. Oh yeah, it looks good. Darker. Desaturated looks pretty good. More saturated? Nope. All right, that's close enough. It's close enough. Obviously, his face is going to have some pinks to it, so let's do that. Just kind of color pick a red I have already. And it's not orange red, it's more pink, which is a cooler red. Desaturated. Yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. I could live with that. Obviously, it's needs a lot of work. Just gotta move forward so this doesn't take 3 hours. Okay, so what's next is their skin. Clearly, their skin is not green, so let's make it not green. Now I'm just going to use a hue set. Okay, I'm going to do a hue set on their skin, bring it more towards a fleshy yellow. It's pretty close. I'm looking at the average, and that's pretty close right there. I nailed it. Got lucky. Less saturated, more. Kind of where it was fine. Lighter, darker. Nope. Kind of an average midtone. Should be more red. Nope. More orange. Nope. Kind of where it was good. So that's a good average. Of course, with every average, you need gradation. So she is brighter and more yellow. And it's also an ethnic, cultural thing. Ethnically, her skin is, she's a different ethnicity than the man with a gun. So her skin, of course, is going to be different temperature. Okay, that's pretty close. The note is close. The relationship is close. So he's going to be probably the same color, but more pink and a little bit brighter. Let's see. Okay, so that's pretty close. It's pretty close. I got to play with it, obviously. His hand, a bit of his hand. More pink, more yellow. That's working. More yellow, less saturation, more saturation. I think where it was pretty good. Brighter. Oh, it looks good. Brighter. Yeah, a little bit brighter. So that's pretty close. Obviously needs some work. So what I'm going to do now is take that same color and make the transition tone, which is sort of this field between the shadow and his skin. And this is not it. I'm just putting something down, as you know, and then I'm going to adjust it in a minute. It's also a little bit in his hand, a little bit in her face, her ear, her hand, her arm. Okay, so I'm going to turn up the saturation and make it more pink. There it is. More pink, more pink. There it is. More pink. Yes. Okay, less saturated. Yeah, that feels pretty good. It's close. You know, it's not perfect. These notes need some work, but I'm there. And then the last thing his rim light is quite bright, huh? I have to respect that. So I'm gonna take, there's a bit of like a dark halftone up here in his head, also in the shadow. So I'm gonna respect that. Should go up here, actually. It's a little too, nope, less, yep, nope, nope. I'm playing with it. The hue now to make it yellow green or blue green. Looks like towards blue green is close, right? I mean, again, not going to be perfect. And then finally, is the rim light. And I'm just going to color pick this light that I have and try it. It probably won't work. Okay, it's too green. It's too green, too saturated. Didn't draw his ear. That's okay. A little bit on her. Is this going to show up? Yeah. Oh. So this is a foreground object, this little rim light here. But we just need that little kick of value. So the rim light is too green. There it is. More blue, too saturated. There it is. More blue. That looks pretty good right there. It's a bit of a violet blue, bit of a desaturated blue. There it is. It's just too saturated. And of course, it looks pretty ugly. Now I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. not that important. Little bit of rim light here. It's on the object actually. All right. So that's a good stopping point. Obviously, I've got a lot of work to do. My drawing is quite ugly and crude and abstract. We got plenty of, we could go, right? We can go as far as you want or as graphic and abstract as you want. But I think this one accomplishes the main color notes, the main movements, the main value notes, and also the transitions from the green to the red, from light green to dark green, yellow to orange, and even the smaller subtle transitions in the character.